Okay, good afternoon again, and welcome to this ASF 2026 pre-event on next generation of solar financing, the future of financing of solar PV and storage. We are convening here at ADB headquarters today on a Monday, I hope it'll be a great week. I'm MJ Nanda, and I'm pleased to serve you as your MC today for today's program. So this afternoon's discussion is designed to be highly interactive. We're not here to listen to presentations, no presentations. We are here to have an honest and practical conversation about why solar PV and storage financing is still not moving fast enough across this region, especially for rooftop and small-scale solar projects. Across 3 sessions, we will move from problem framing to solutions and practice, and then finally to priority actions and next steps. The aim is to identify practical interventions that APVIA, who is one of the co-organizers along with ADB Ventures, can take forward from this event, including through the planned APVIA expert group meeting in Bangkok in a few months' time. So, good afternoon and welcome again. Thank you for filling up the room. It's great to see an ASF pre-event having such an interest. So now we will move on to some of the opening remarks. But before we go into the opening remarks, we have a very interesting video from APVIA where you'll see them revealing their new logo, but this will also give you a perspective of who APVIA is as an organization. So I'll cue a team in the control room to bring up the video slide, please.
Necessity and innovation have always pushed us forward, from the beginning of time to the edges of what's possible. Today, the world stands at a crossroads, where necessity once again challenges us to quit our addiction and dependence on yesterday's limited energy resources. As this dark shadow looms over us, solar energy and storage shines brightly as the sustainable way forward.
The Asian PV Industry Association is entering a new phase in its history. It stands at a point where solar technology has matured extensively, as manifested by the installed capacity of solar globally, reaching as much as a terawatt of capacity worldwide. It has become the most competitive technology solution. To date, it is the cheapest and the most affordable renewable energy. It is able to provide extended hours of clean energy. With the emergence of storage, you can now enjoy solar power even at nighttime. Now is the time to surge forward.
This goes beyond protecting the planet. Decarbonisation is about safeguarding societies and economies.
Our drive for a secure future starts today, and it starts in Asia, with its fast-growing economies, manufacturing capabilities, and technological innovations. Different nations, one mission. APVIA's mission is to advance the adoption of photovoltaic and energy storage technologies across the Asia-Pacific region through collaboration, exchange of knowledge, policy engagement, innovation, and strategic partnerships. And its vision is an Asia-Pacific region powered by reliable, accessible, and sustainable solar energy systems, where photovoltaic and storage technologies contribute significantly to energy security, grid resiliency, economic growth, climate resilience, and environmental sustainability. The APVIA offers a unique regional platform that will enable the industry associations to accelerate their journey towards decarbonization and to strengthen their unified voice to reach their ambitious goal of economic prosperity and sustained growth. We are APVIA. Together, we will lead the charge to a solar-powered, secure future for Asia Pacific.
Thank you. That's a lovely new logo, so vibrant. So now to formally open today's discussion, may I first invite Ms. Techi Kaplan, Chairperson of APVIA, to deliver her short opening remark. Techi, please. Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. Good afternoon, everyone. I just returned from a trip that I normally do every June. I was in Shanghai, and together with my colleagues in APVIA, we attended what is considered by the industry as the world's largest solar conference and exhibition. I left the conference Thursday morning, and at that time, the recorded attendance was at 800,000 visitors. Really incredible. Such remarkable attendance only affirms the unwavering commitment of the industry towards decarbonization. Despite the adverse circumstances brought by geopolitical conflicts and notwithstanding the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the solar momentum stayed its course. Today in Asia and the Pacific, solar trade continues to expand. Regulations are being reviewed. Industries are slowly turning green, and storage is being integrated into the electric system. Asia and the Pacific has done pretty well. But if we are to preserve the gains we have accomplished in the last 20 years, since solar reached a terawatt capacity in 2023, or sustain the competitiveness of solar prices vis-a-vis fuel prices, our journey towards decarbonization must include reforming our grid, preparing our workforce, and increasing the flow of investment in this part of the world in an accelerated pace. This is the reason for inviting you today. The objective of our gathering this afternoon takes one of these critical elements, solar financing. Our collaboration is critical to the continued growth of solar in the region and for the prosperity of Asia and the Pacific. This is why APVIA organized this session, so together we can discover the bottlenecks to solar financing. We can identify innovative ways to dismantle the barriers and seek the support of multiple funders in order to deploy capital for development and construction of solar power plants in farms, on rooftops, and in water. Our collective effort today will enable Asia and the Pacific to accelerate our national efforts in reaching its decarbonization targets by 2050 for the benefit of regional prosperity and preservation of our planet. So good luck to all of us, and welcome to Manila.
Thank you very much, Techi, for setting the tone and for highlighting APVIA's role in bringing the regional solar industry together. May I now invite Daniel Herson, Senior Fund Manager and co-founder of ADB Ventures, to share his opening remarks. Over to you, Daniel.
So thank you, everyone, and it's great to see so many people here, beginning of ASEF. I haven't had much time to prepare, but obviously with the help of AI, I have a few minutes of speech or just sharing some thoughts. I've actually been in the solar industry for more than 25 years. I remember the days of First Solar, of Sun Edison, you know, the first generation of sort of solar financing, the solar PPAs, the leasing. That was all exciting, but solar still was around $5 per watt. I remember it was still a niche. We were looking for these niche opportunities, and it was difficult, but we were hopeful. But it took time. The last thing actually I did in my previous life was to shut down a solar plant or manufacturing line, because things were moving fast then. China entered the picture, we had Suntech, and costs came down fast, much faster than people expected. And we know today that the solar won that game. Solar is now the fastest growing source of energy in the world, and in many places the cheapest. But many times that's often just in theory. There's still so much to do around solar that we need if we really want to scale to the next phase. I think solar so far has been successful, but still been centered around traditional financing models, PPAs, standard project financing, large-scale centralized. I think the next phase, and it's already happened, will have to be very different. It's almost like making a good cup of coffee. You know, great beans is just a starting point, but we're going to need everything around it: processing, roasting, the cup, the baristas, everyone. And if we want to take the next phase, we need to make solar not just the cheapest, but also the best and most convenient. Integration, obviously, with storage, thinking about maintenance upfront, thinking about distributed solar, all the soft cost and frictions, we need to find a new way to address. But I'm really excited. I think now is an amazing opportunity, particularly with more digital tools, more data, to really think about how will solar, what a solar would mean in the next 10, 20 years. I think a solar plant in 10 years' time would look very different from today. And what will solar financing look like in the next 10, 20 years? Models that some of you in this room, I know, are already working on, experimenting, but it might be completely new models we can't even imagine. And this is really what ADB Ventures is all about. ADB Ventures is the venture capital arm of ADB. We were set up around 6-7 years ago. We have around $120, $130 under management. We're a small fund, and we invest really at the edge of what we think is innovation, in particularly in renewable energy and sort of adjacent sectors. There are a couple of our investees here in this room, for example, Q Labs. But we really see a whole new wave of innovation happening in solar, things that we didn't see a few years ago. So with the people in this room and the expertise outside this room, I'm really excited about what's next. So looking forward to this afternoon, to the conversation in the room and outside. If anyone want to contact me, I'm sure you can find a way. I'd love to explore new ideas, new investments, and just where we're heading in the next 10, 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for those remarks and for bringing in ADB Ventures' perspective on innovation and investment. We will now move on to our scene-setting presentations, or remarks, actually. To help frame the broader market and financing context, I'm pleased to invite Lorraine Akiba, President and CEO of LHA Ventures, to share her reflections. Lauren, thank you.
Aloha. Thank you to APVIA and Techi and Peter for the invitation, and of course Stephen, to share insights today. I hope that what you have to discuss today and the lessons that Hawaii has learned and our experience, our insights will provide interesting food for thought as you begin to discuss how APVIA can advocate for and support a massive scale-up of rooftop PV and storage across ASEAN, the ASEAN region. I wanted to share with you Hawaii's vision and lessons learned. And hopefully in that process, we will address a number of the myths or the naysayer thoughts about solar and storage in terms of costs, grid stability, and energy security. Hawaii has been on this journey for many years, and I'm proud to say that most of what we have learned and what we have accomplished has been through the joint and coordinated effort of folks like yourselves from the solar industry, along with the utility, and importantly, with cooperation and coordination, strategic effort, and actions from the regulators and from the legislative policymakers. It takes an entire ecosystem of those stakeholders. As we say in Hawaii, everyone in the canoe has to paddle in the same direction for us to go forward. Hawaii really is sending postcards from the future. We are the living laboratory for the integrated grid of the future to achieve 100% renewable energy and decarbonization, and we actually have a mandate to do that by 2045. And we are well along the way to do that, where I'm proud to say that our utilities have exceeded the renewable portfolio standards that were put in place for 2025 and are well on their way to accomplish this goal. I want you to take a minute, maybe close your eyes for a minute, envision the integrated grid of the future. What would that toolkit include? For Hawaii, the toolkit includes implementing distributed energy resource actions. It is not just large-scale utility solar, but it is a combination of both large-scale and distributed energy resources. And that distributed energy resource includes energy storage as well. So utilizing energy storage technology, microgrid services, and demand-side management resources, which is something people don't think about, to support a 100% renewable energy grid. Achieving an integrated energy network through grid modernization is key. I know Techi talked about that. Much of the challenge for APVIA is to discuss and recommend actions to implement grid modernization and to share the integrated grid, not just with the electric sector, but the water, telecommunications, and the transportation sectors. So you have a key role as a Solar Industry Association, a social responsibility which really affects other sectors in your economies and in your regions. Investing in smart grid infrastructure and grid edge technologies is also fundamental. That will facilitate the financing that will also help for solar projects. And of course, regulating the regulators in a time of innovation also includes empowered customers, dynamic markets, and sustainable infrastructure. So many of the barriers that I know in the preparatory materials that you've identified as an association, system integration challenges, financing challenges, we've had the same things in Hawaii. And what's also a significant challenge for us is we are island grids. So I want to let you know from a positive point of view, if we were able to do this with island grids, the potential for many of you to do this in your regions with a lot larger footprint and some geographic sharing is even greater. As you may be aware, Hawaii's electric system is comprised of 6 separate island grids with no interconnection and transmission capability between the islands. Each island grid operates independently for energy generation and system balancing. What helps, though, is we have a mandate for 100% renewable energy on Hawaii's electric grids by 2045. We have increasing levels of intermittent renewable energy from various sources. We have the need for distribution circuit monitoring and demand-side management tools at the sub-transmission level. But the key here is integrated grid planning, and modern grid infrastructure are critical given these grid impacts from the distribution circuits to the transmission circuits. So it's increased utilization of smart grid technology, including advanced meters and smart inverters in PV and energy systems. What is doable today was not even possible 10 years ago. But there are smart inverters in both solar PV panels and in battery systems. Those inverters can provide reactive power, things that the traditional grid operator never thought about, that these technologies would be able to provide the same things as frequency regulation or spinning reserves and the old way of doing things. So technology has become a solution, and investing together in grid modernization technology along with the solar traditional hardware is critical. We have been able to do this through effective regulatory oversight and legislative policy. I am what I call a recovering regulator. I was the former commissioner of the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission in a very key time when we had to expand all of this from 2012 to 2018. And we had legislation advancing grid modernization technology and principles that directed the PUC to consider the value of improving electrical generation transmission systems, to facilitate and incent with tariffs appropriate for pricing, to incent the market, to facilitate financing so that independent power producers, developers, and system integrators, aggregators of rooftop PV could thrive in a market, and to provide the background and certainty and minimize the risks that would allow increase of the market. We have been successful in large part to that coordination and cooperation, like I said before, between all the stakeholders. Hawaii now, and we have an independent owned utility, an IOU, Hawaiian Electric, which is the predominant utility on 5 of our 6 islands, and we have a rural cooperative, Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, which runs the system on one of the other islands, Kauai. Kauai is already at 85 to 95% renewable energy per day, and primarily through solar and storage. This is the success. It can happen. On the other islands, the 5 other islands that Hawaiian Electric runs the grid on, we're at 57% on the Big Island, 42% in Maui, and 32% on Oahu, where the major population lives, for a consolidated renewable portfolio standard of 37%. And this keeps increasing with the amount of rooftop PV as well, providing that about 45% of all the single-family residences in Hawaii are powered by rooftop PV, and many of them also have customer-sided battery energy storage for resiliency and reliability. In fact, in Hawaii, at the end of 2025, the customer-sided rooftop solar surpassed 1 gigawatt of energy, and that's a tremendous amount for a small island grid. It is, in fact, possible. It is doable. The dialogue that you're going to have here today to address these issues is so important. And I think our lessons have shown you that solar can be achieved, distributed energy resources, solar and battery can be achieved, and really they do provide a more cost-effective deployment of energy resources, not subject to imported fuel, oil, gas, price volatility, as we see with the recent geopolitical events in the Strait of Hormuz, and more resilient and reliable given increased impacts from not only geopolitical events, but climate events. We are at a very critical time where climate has impacted, whether it's hurricanes, typhoons, and even wildfires. There's a lot of impacts that renewable energy can help a grid be more resilient and reliable, and yet still be affordable. So I challenge you today, and I hope that you're inspired by the lessons of Hawaii, and leaving you again food for thought as a basis for your discussions. As we say in Hawaii, move forward, imua. Imua.
Thank you, Lorraine, for the excellent framing. I really love the last part of it, where you challenge your audience to do something in this session. So that gives us a strong foundation for our first discussion, which will focus on the solar market trends and the financing barriers that are continuing in the deployment side of things. So the first session is our context setting and the problem framing session. This session, we will use a fishbowl format. In this, no presentations. We have a group of anchor contributors who will provide both brief opening interventions. After that, the discussion will open to the wider group. The purpose of Fishbowl is to make this as a shared conversation. Participants in the outer circle are encouraged to join the discussion, respond to the framing questions, challenge assumptions, and bring in practical perspectives from their own markets and institutions. So to moderate this discussion, I'm pleased to invite Peter DuPont, co-CEO of Asia Clean Energy Partners. And the key contributors, or the anchor contributors for this, will have Steve Bloom, the Secretary General of APVIA and Smart Energy Council. He also is the chairperson of Renewable Energy Council Asia Pacific. Then we'll have Caldwell Hoy, Director of Renewable Energy, Machine and Technic. So he will give the solar EPC perspective and the project development perspective side of things. And then as a third contributor, we have Farhad Tazigade Hezari. He's the chief economist in Climate Finance Asia. He brings in the finance and investment perspective. And finally, we have Sashank, actually. So you see Jigar on the screen, but that's because Sashank was most likely not able to make it, but you're glad he did. So Shashank is the Joint Secretary of Ministry of Power India. He will talk about the enabling environment deployment and a really good example on the India MFF example. So each contributor has around 3 minutes, and over to you, Peter. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. I am so excited because we got the call to battle, and there is a battle in the Middle East, and that's one of the reasons we have this great opportunity. Lorraine did the impossible. You really crystallized in 10 minutes that we can do it. So I'm really excited. And the great thing is we've got all the ingredients. As Daniel said, we have barista. I think the barista is probably Techi. And then we've got a bunch of different perspectives, and all of you who know solutions and can share them. So I want to say a couple of things. So we're going to focus on, why distributed rooftop C&I and small-scale solar is still struggling to access finance. We're going to talk about what are the main barriers. We want to hear about solutions, technical and financing solutions. And we want to hear about enabling actions. But before we go to that, this journey sort of is a coming out party for APVIA. So APVIA has had success in raising funding to scale up in a big way. And so I have the privilege to be part of a team supporting APVIA over the next 3 years. And there's a series of events each year building the momentum. So we don't want this to be a one and done. In fact, this session will be brief. We've got about 35 minutes or something before the coffee break, but we want the discussion to continue. This is the first hour. The second hour is really cool. It's World Cafe, so you'll be choosing your adventure. We have 7 different adventures you can choose from. And the final session will be wrapping up. What are the lessons learned? Where can we go from here? And specifically, at our next meeting, which we're planning in Bangkok in August, how can we bring together solutions focused on investment and bringing the regulators in to hear that, why they need to make changes, and then also bringing in people with market experience. So I'm really thrilled here. So this, the fishbowl, this is like putting a round peg in a square hole. It's supposed to be like a circle, but it's more like a squashed ellipse. So sorry about that. MJ, describe what the fishbowl is. And each person here brings a perspective. And the reason, these are the fire starters. So they have 3 minutes each, no long speeches. We have industry perspective. We have a solar EPC project development perspective. We have a finance perspective. And we have perspective from Shashank, you must have just helicoptered in. That's why you were able to make it. There is a helicopter pad on top of the mall next door. Did you come in there? Okay. So we'll start with someone who's been in the industry a long time, and 3 minutes, briefly, who you are, and then your perspective from industry on challenges and solutions. So, Steve?
Thank you, and thanks everybody for having me. I won't go into who I am. I'm from Australia, and we've had a success story not dissimilar to Hawaii, and we can talk about that offline. I've been around the industry for at least 26 years. I've been an environmental activist for at least 50 years, and renewable energy was the reason it was the direction I wanted to go, because I looked at it as being the solution. 3 words, I think, relate to what we're talking about today and why you would look at distributed energy and PV. And when we talk about solar and solar PV, nowadays it always includes batteries, energy storage of some sort. That might be batteries attached to that system, or it could be batteries on wheels, which we call EVs. And they are going to be absolutely game-changing around the world as we replace the existing fleet. The 3 words are cost, security, and necessity, which was also mentioned in our video from APVIA. And just very quickly, it is the lowest cost energy system you can provide and deliver today anywhere in the world. There are no markets where that isn't true. Happy to have an argument with anybody who thinks otherwise, but that's just actually the fact. The second thing is security, and I include in that sovereignty. If the oil crisis has done anything, I mean, the irony is that a president who's opposed to renewables has probably pushed this towards renewables faster than any previous president. And why? Because the world has suddenly realised the dependency they have on oil and everything to do with fossil fuels, and the only path out is through renewable energy, and that's going to be solar PV and batteries predominantly. There'll be biofuels. Some countries, Northern Hemisphere especially, will go nuclear. That's really long-term and hugely expensive, even compared to fossil fuels. It's expensive, and fossil fuels are the most expensive fuel we've ever used as humanity. We just don't count the costs yet. The third one is necessity. Well, the necessity is when you get frightened enough and you realise what your dependency is, and you realise the only answer is to move fast and move local and do it with local things and local support, and that'll give you long-term support. I'll just finish with one little thing, a little prop. I don't want to be rude in the country I'm a guest in today, but today, in the Manila Bulletin, there's a full-page ad, and it says, "What causes grid alerts?" And it's a very informative ad, and it's nothing that's wrong with it particularly. And I understand they're the transmission operator, and clearly they're doing a great job. And grids, I have to say, are the most undervalued thing by almost everybody, because they just work mostly, and so people don't value them. But they're not always necessary. And what do we need? We need reliable baseload power plants built in the right places. Well, I'm sorry, but that part's wrong. Baseload power is a business problem, and a business definition, not an engineering definition. It's caused by inflexible power plants, coal plants, oil plants, fossil gas plants, nuclear plants, inflexible plants that actually are never going to be employed in the 7,000 islands in this country. They're never going to be employed in the 17,000 islands in Indonesia. They're never going to be employed on any island across the Pacific, right? If you want new electricity, you want to enhance the electricity you've got and replace diesel, PV, that is solar and battery, is your only answer. Discuss.
So you heard it here. You've heard it before, but baseload is dead. It's a fossil, okay? That's a good takeaway. Steve has a wealth of experience in the solar industry in Australia and working internationally we can get into. Again, we're trying to get into interactive discussion with a bunch of you in the inner circle, outer circle, across here. So next is Caldwell Hoey, who is the Director of Renewable Energy for Machinen and Technic. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. And look forward to you speaking from a project development and delivery perspective.
Excellent, thank you. Looks like I'm the local representative here. I think Tetchy wanted me to come here because I am an EPC, or we are an EPC, and we do get to see every aspect of a solar project or a solar and storage project. So we get to see the conceptualization of a project when someone says that they do want to integrate solar into their operation or their facility. And then we also get to see the near end goal where they are either heartbroken by a cost or they need to find financing, but they cannot get one that is just right for their, for their size. And so if there's one thing that I'd like everyone to take away from this entire discussion is that when you are an EPC, you are the biggest balancing act in this entire process, because you're trying to get what would be a very dynamic pricing situation today for all the materials that you have. And then at the end of it, you're also trying to find your end user the right financing, whether they need it or not, and the right method of financing as well. That makes effective sense for them, because everyone can get financing, but a lot of times they may not want it because the end goal is that it's not effective for them. They're not saving enough, they're not doing enough impact that they want to do. And so this is something that we do see on a daily basis for both solar and storage.
So what have you seen since the Iran war started? Have you seen a huge demand?
It's a great time for storage. I tell this to everybody, the last 2 months, we've had inquiries from 3-4 years ago telling us, hey, is that price still okay? And that's pricing from 3-4 years ago. But on a more serious note, though, it has put us, especially locally, in a situation where the price of the distribution utility is almost at a point where it makes sense to integrate a reasonable storage to your grid-connected system. For islands, this has been the case for the last 6-7 years, where we are past a certain point where it makes sense over diesel. But now you'll see more and more, especially edge of grid areas, where, especially if they're heavily reliant on peaking plants, where we're at almost parity, where it makes sense to put some storage on. But this is not for everywhere in the country. This is just for select areas where it passes a certain threshold, of course. I don't want to say what price that is just yet.
Awesome, and we are going to hear more from the local industry. We have, during the Choose Your Adventure session, we'll have Ping Mendoza, who's the chair of the Philippines PV Industry Association, will have one of the stations. We also have a couple of companies, Quantified Energy and SunFund, who are investees of ADB Ventures. We also have New Energy Nexus, and I believe Brenda with New Energy Nexus did an interesting briefing on the problems with developers keeping up with business. They're getting like 5-fold increase in demand and they cannot keep up. So we're moving on now to Farhad. Farhad is Chief Economist with Climate Finance Asia. He's based at Tokai University in Japan, and he'll draw on his experience to describe and diagnose what prevents capital from flowing into early stage distributed PV systems. Yeah. So thank you for coming, Farhad.
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. I'm based in Tokyo. I'm a university professor at Tokai University. And at the same time, I'm a chief economist of Climate Finance Asia. In the past 6-7 years, I've been mainly working on green finance, on designing instruments, tools that can bring the private investment into green projects, including solar projects. If I'm going to summarize my works in the past 6-7 years in these 3 minutes times that I have, is that the challenge and the difficulty related to finance and investment is not lack of capital. The capital is existing. The difficulty is lack of investable project. So this is an important point. And actually, if we see this issue from the point of view of larger scale investors or institutional investors, so traditionally investors just consider the risk and return. So most recently, many investors are also including sustainability or ESG into their criteria. But frankly speaking, still risk and return are the major drivers of the investors. So if we want to design any policy, if we want to design any tools, if it can increase the rate of return and reduce the risk, so automatically it can bring the flow of fund and we no need to advertise for the projects. And when we are looking at the especially small scale solar projects, still there are several risks associated with them. For example, the lack of credit worthiness of the off-takers in some markets. And some small, SME developers that they don't have enough track record from the point of view of financiers, or permitting challenges, currency risk, or some projects which are in the earlier stage of development, they are not ready to have investment. And so from this perspective, the risk mitigation mechanism is very important, such as green credit guarantee that already started in some markets, or any type of tools, institutions that can do the credit enhancement is also very important. And on the other hand, for the return side, from the investor's perspective, having a stable rules and regulation is very important. So especially in many developing countries, rules are changing every year or every quarter and so on. So tax incentives or accelerated depreciation is also very important, that can increase the rate of return. And also the blended finance is important, especially governments, climate funds, multilateral development banks. They can have very important role in order to mitigate the risk and crowd in the private investor. So it means, governments, MDBs and so on should never compete with the private sector, because private money is there, but because of the risk, because of the low rate of return, is hesitating. So existence of this mechanism can crowd in the private investment. And finally, scale is also very important. So besides risk, return, the scale is very important. So when we are, aggregating the project is very important in order to make it suitable for the investment.
Can we stop there, because you're over 3 minutes?
Yes.
I gave you a little bit of time. Usually I have a time trading system where if you go over, you can sell to somebody else, but you're the second last one. Perfect segue. We're going into aggregation. Perfect. Okay? And ADB is doing a really exciting project. It's a large project, and you will hear about it this week. You'll also hear about it today in the Choose Your Adventure session, which is coming up right after this. But I'd like to introduce Shashank Mishra, who's the Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Power of India, to describe briefly again what are some of the key characteristics of the rooftop PV landscape in India now. What gives you cause for hope? Because we've heard enough barriers, hope. And then as we are about to open it up to other people, I want to sort of emphasize again, APVIA, its role is an enabler and a neutral market facilitator. So we're trying to surface examples that work, business models, financing models, right, and take them forward. So that's what we're doing. So think about what you can share after this. Specific experience would be good, not just general blah, 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 or you can just say, hey, I'm really committed and this is what I do. So we're going to go into that after Shashank has his 3 minutes of fame.
Thank you. So without getting into the introduction, because as I've already been introduced, so let me give you a broad landscape under which, the rooftop solar is currently under execution in India. So as it is that, around 150 gigawatts of energy is coming from solar right now in India. And under the PM Surya Ghar Yojana, which is one of the flagship schemes which has been launched by Government of India, we are targeting to install around 1 crore of rooftop solar installations.
I'm just going to hold you there. 1 crore, 10
Yes.
million, right?
10 million, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
For those of you who are not crore fluent.
Yeah. So till now, around 4.2 million of households have been installed with rooftop solar, and it is generating somewhere around 16 gigawatts of the energy. This is a huge energy which is getting generated. And one of the things that generally comes as the barriers to the installation of rooftop solar, to begin with, was the challenges that were coming from the distribution utilities, because they had their own PPAs being tied up, they had their own resources already being managed, which had their own costs, fixed costs and the variable costs. So the rooftop solar was one of the factors which was really concerning the distribution companies, and I, being joint secretary of the distribution, so I had a very strong role to play, to coordinate between the distribution companies and the rooftop solar installers, the vendors. So a lot of enabling environment was created, though it was mentioned by one of my colleagues that the rules and regulations, they have to be very stable. But since this is a very emerging scenario, so a lot of new rules and regulations were required to be established to create this enabling environment for the rooftop solar. So we came up with the doing away with the feasibility studies, doing away with the early installation charges that were taken for the rooftop solar. And there was a concept of net metering, where the entire energy that was generated from rooftop solar was just netted off against the energy which was consumed. So this created a kind of, facilitator for the rooftop solar installation, wherein, the consumer could themselves generate revenue out of it. And to give it a further push, in an aggregated manner, the distribution companies started with the concept of utility-led aggregation model. So wherein, since the distribution companies were one, which were the biggest barriers, now they have become they have become the project developers. So these distribution companies, they aggregate the demand of the rooftops, and then, on a RESCO mode or in a project development mode, they used to take up the development of rooftop solar installation. And I must say that, ADB has also been forthcoming in financing these kind of projects through the blended finance mechanism. And it has generated quite a bit of hope in the, installations being really picking up, because approaching individual consumers may be a little challenging, though there were low-cost finances available. But definitely there is a cause of concern for the financiers, how to get the return from so many individuals, how to get the repayments. But when this is aggregated at the distribution company level, and that too, it being now the strongest enabler of the rooftop solar installation, that has become a very strong risk being taken over by the distribution company, kind of settling the concerns for the financiers, and now this is kind of opening the sector for a lot of financing.
Let's pause there.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, because one of the things we've been talking about at APVIA is how important it is to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. Like, we're going to have, Indonesia just announced, 100 gigawatts. That's crazy. Like, how much solar they have now. That's absolutely crazy. But it is driving, and same thing in India has happened. So that's obviously allowing the regulations to be relaxed, because the Prime Minister is sort of, it's top down. The other thing you're saying is that distribution companies are becoming sort of the marketers, right, and the aggregators. And interestingly, we were having a sidebar with Lorraine and somebody else, and a person asked, well, what happened after, to Hawaii Electric? Because people didn't know what would happen. And actually, Lorraine said they're doing quite well. Maybe you could just describe, because I'm going to go on, but just why Hawaii Electric is doing okay, and how the fears of utilities, because I mentioned to you in Thailand, this is a big barrier. This is why the feed-in tariff has been delayed for years. Maybe 1 minute on that, and then we'll sort of crowdsource some other ideas.
Well, I think the regulators are here, have to be credited for that, to set the correct tariffs, the distributed energy resources tariffs, so that there was certainty for the customers and for utilities, so that the industry developers would have certainty, and the financing could flow from the private sector. What was the challenge were the interconnection standards, and again, the regulators oversaw that process to make sure that these barriers for integration of solar at the distribution level were addressed, because there was more ability to put rooftop solar on distribution circuits in Hawaii. There were studies that were done, there were standards that were set, again, all facilitated by working together. And it took bringing people together to discuss this, but the utilities were at that table, and they benefit because they're able to use that rooftop solar as to credit themselves for meeting the statutory requirement of renewable energy. And without that, they wouldn't be compliant and they would be subject to penalties. So there was a big incentive for the utility.
Great explanation. And then if I were a skeptic, I'm not skeptical, I'm optimistic. I would say, oh, it's just Hawaii. Okay, so I have a plant. He doesn't know he's a plant, but so someone who was involved in Hawaii, who's a longtime friend of mine, I asked the question, like, so what, just Hawaii? Like, can that scale to other markets? And Kyle Data is a Asia Pacific Executive Director for Teneo. Maybe just answer that question.
Sure. Greetings, everyone. So I think the model does scale, but I think there's issues for Asia to consider. I want to put a stake in the ground. So outside of China and now what India has done, only 5% of the capital deployed in renewable energy actually comes from consumer finance. What Lorraine described unlocked consumer finance in Hawaii. That's a big, big gap. That's $1 trillion gap in all these other nations. And so part of it comes down to, as Faraz said, all the risk issues, credit risk in particular, installation risk, permitting risk, balance sheet risk, transaction costs, what India solved. So I think the framework of regulation that Lorraine and her leadership in the Commission created opened the door to unlock consumer finance. I think one of the questions I want to put out for our discussion this afternoon is, how do we unlock consumer finance in Asia outside of the China and then outside of India, including, by the way, new business models, which is another thing India has done.
And then I'd like to call on someone who also doesn't know he's a plant, but he's part of the APVIA team. Som, can you just talk briefly about what's happening in Thailand? Because they are making available 200,000 baht, which is like $6,000 incentive for home solar, but things are starting to pick up. And what does that look like? And how do we get to sort of a consumer market, just where you have car loans and you have, PV loans? What's the market like there?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, I'm Som from Bangkok, Thailand. I'm doing everything except EPC. That's again. Yeah, because I believe that whether for the residential rooftop, or the CNI, or even the utility scale solar, we need to focus on the quality and the safety. Because, for example, the people who have solar on their roof, they need to know that they have a silent risk on their roof. They need to aware before they decide for the material, for the installer, or for the operator who come after the installation. So that's one of the important I want to share. And without the awareness, without the knowledge, or without the good people to do the good job for them, so that's a little bit difficult. It's happened already in Thailand that some system catching fire. So I would say that whether the financial, whether the technical, it can be done. Everything can be engineered, everything can be financed, because we are all together find the solution. But we also need to tell the truth, to say the truth, that there are some silent risks which we need to mitigate, which we need to work together, because Thailand is a little bit stuck now. Whether the government try to give good tax privilege. So I would say about the quality and the safety of the solar that we need to do it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Also, I should mention the India example will be one of the adventures you can choose in the World Cafe session. So we have time for a few people to hold up their hands, introduce themselves, share. I know other people I could call on. I'm looking at some of them, but they're looking away. No, I know it's a big, usually it's a more, you can do this with like 80 people, but usually it's a circle. So don't think of us as having any more knowledge than you. Probably you're smarter than us, at least in the aggregate. So who wants to share? Thoughts? Oh, we needed to put more plants in the audience. because I don't want to just us have a conversation. Like I'm going to walk around and look at someone and who, okay, yes, see, I threatened to, okay, so the mic is coming around to you. Thank you, Punch.
Hi, so I'm Jan. I'm actually not in the energy industry, I'm in the legal industry. So we respond to threats, so very well. I guess...
You're not going to close us down, are you?
No, not at all, not yet anyways, I'm kidding. But at this moment, I'm looking at it from the consumer perspective, yes? I don't know that if you know this, but I tried in my own home to make to have a solar rooftop in my own home. The biggest concern was not the health issues, the silent threats, but the amount of money that the company was asking me in order to install a solar panel in my roof, just for one room, a test per se. They wanted to get my bill, my monthly billing. They wanted to multiply it by 5, by 12, then by 5 years. And that's the amount of money that they want me to spend on just installation. So before we look into the idea of financing, let's look into the idea of the capability of a normal person in a household to be able to do what needs to be done in order to have sustainable energy. If these companies cannot match, or at the very least cannot provide this service at a lower cost for people in the middle class, which I would term my household, how can then we move forward with such an energy sustainability? We're forgetting that majority of the people won't be able to provide this this kind of initiative.
Yeah, so instead of having a financing product, they're basically gouging you, which is not good. Yes, Steve. Okay, thank you for that, sharing that.
Thank you. That's absolutely the fundamental question. Renewable energy is a capital question. All renewable energy of any scale and every scale is a capital question because there is no fuel involved. And there's a little bit of O&M, but they are solid-state devices largely and very reliable, so the O&M is less than most other infrastructure as well. So it's really a capital question at the household level as well as everywhere else. There are mechanisms to do that. The really core thing in this room, when you're talking to a venture capitalist or a funder or ADB or anybody else, a small-scale system is going to be $50 million, $100 million. Where does the household fit in that? Nowhere. Doesn't fit, right? That's across islands, that's across country nations that have got 18,000 people as a nation. Tuvalu, for example, 18,000 people. $50 million is nonsense, right? They can't even cope with that. There are mechanisms to do that. One of the ways that you can do that is you create structures, and I don't want to solve it right here, but you create structures so that there is access to that finance, because it's the upfront finance. Over time, your cost savings, effectively coming off the cost of your bills from fossil fuels, will fund your system, no question, right? But it might be 5 years, it might be 7 years. This is a system that'll last 20 to 30 years comfortably if it's installed properly. It's a no-brainer from a finance perspective, you would think, but of course for somebody that says, I need $10,000 or $15,000, that ain't $50 million, right? There are mechanisms to make sure you set up a structure of panel of lenders, for example, who are retail lenders that can be funded at the level that a large-scale funder is willing to pass through the money, who will carry some of the risk of that. And I have to say, the infrastructure risk for this stuff is really low compared to almost any other infrastructure for a whole bunch of reasons. We can have that conversation outside, but it's not like original infrastructure. So even the commissioning risk is much lower than most people imagine, but it's because of ignorance of what the technology is and how it's done. Critical of that is standards, compliance of installation, quality standards for the items themselves.
And good business models. I believe John of Sun Fund will talk about this. You can choose the adventure with John and Yan Wang, two of the investees later. And we have someone back there. Yes, can we run the mic to this gentleman? Yep. And then maybe one more after that. We're going to just go 5 minutes over.
Hello, everyone. This is Piyush Mathur, and I run a business called Odyssey Energy Solutions, which provides financing and procurement help to commercial and industrial solar developers. A lot is spoken about the financing challenge at the end user level, but in the C&I solar sector, what we find is that very little is said about the financing challenges of the EPCs. And why is that important? That's important because still 88% of the projects built are on a CapEx basis. So yes, the buyer has financing available, but the EPC invariably faces delays in building of the project because of the financing not being available. So I think there are interesting models out there which we ourselves have championed, which are making that financing available. And
Give one example, and I'm just looking at Som because he's sort of smiling. That's why he's not an EPC.
Yes.
But give us one example.
So what we do, well, I can take an example. We provide supply chain credit, which is staple to the equipment that we procure for these EPCs. So it's a two-in-one benefit. Not only do you get advantage of aggregated procurement and buy at more optimized CapEx than you would otherwise do if you were procuring directly, but then you also get credit attached to that, and that credit covers the critical construction period, Steve, that you were also talking about, and you then pay us out of your receipts of the project from the ultimate buyer. We have created that sort of ensconced secure structure, which gives repayment security to us, but then gets the project moving. And I would encourage some focus and some conversation on this topic also, because as we said, 88% of the projects are still being built on CapEx basis.
Yep.
So
and you're based where?
We're based everywhere. We work in Africa, we work in India, and we work in Latin America, Mexico, and Brazil.
Great. Okay, so I'm sure people want to talk to you. Thank you for that. We're going to break. We have a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 3:20.